All right, we'll be getting back to that story shortly. Remember, I promised that we will be going to the Wilson Airport any minute now, as the two pilots were abducted after their plane crashed in Upper Nile in Akobo in South Sudan. Killed one person and destroyed property. The government of Kenya and the rebels finally agreed on the amount of money to be paid as compensation for the two pilots to be released. And we are bringing you the live pictures there from the Wilson Airport, where the two pilots have touched down in that particular plane. Our reporter is on the ground. In a moment, we'll be seeing the occupants of that particular plane, among them the two pilots who were abducted in South Sudan after, or who are held hostage in South Sudan after their plane crashed in the Upper Nile in Akobo, killing one woman and destroying property, among them livestock, for a number of people in South Sudan. This particular incident happened on the 7th of January, beginning of this year. These pilots have been held hostage since then to now, when the government has finally cut a deal with the rebels to release these two. Families have been in anguish for these people, asking the government to intervene and bring their people back home. They really were not sure the status in which they were living in, but it's definitely good news, not only for the families, but for the country at large, as the pilots have finally been released. The plane carrying them touching down at Wilson Airport. As you can see, live pictures that we are bringing you or transmitting for you from the Wilson Airport, where the two pilots are finally landing back into their country after being held hostage for almost 2 months in South Sudan. Rather, the Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary is among those that are present at the Wilson Airport to receive these two pilots. The Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary, newly appointed Cabinet Secretary, definitely, Monica Juma. The wives of the two pilots who have been held hostage since the 7th of January are also present at the Wilson Airport. They have been concerted efforts to relegate the pilots released from the moment they were abducted in South Sudan, the Upper Nile in Akobo. And of course, it has definitely involved both the governments of Kenya and South Sudan. And it is the fruit of what we are seeing right now happening at the Wilson Airport, as the pilots are getting out. They should be getting out of the plane any moment now. And of course, where else to get it live than here on KTN News? It will be very interesting to hear what they have to say, what the pilots will have to say, what the CS will have to say, seeing as this is her first assignment as the Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs after she was sworn in a few days ago in State House here in Nairobi. The Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs, Monica Juma, is not a stranger to such situations. Remember, she was also a principal secretary in the same docket. And of course, some of the things that she witnessed was the coming home of the 4 Kenyans who had also been held hostage in Sudan. So there we go, the Cabinet Secretary being the first in line to receive the two pilots who have finally been received from hostage in Akobo in Upper Nile in South Sudan, coming off the plane. 2 months of anguish, 2 months of despair, not just for them, but for their families back home here in the country. Those are live pictures we are bringing you. We will be crossing there live to just get a feel of what really is happening. The Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs has gone into the plane, perhaps to speak to the pilots before they come out, and definitely speaking to the media. She's actually outside welcoming one of them, the Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs there, Monica Juma, being hugged there by some of their families, the two pilots, visibly very emotional, very happy to be home, very wary. Must have been 2 hard months for them, getting off to South Sudan, not knowing that they will not be coming back after 2 months. But from the efforts that have been put in, they're finally back home. There's a rain of emotion there at the Wilson Airport as the pilots are welcomed by their families, tears flowing freely as you can see, definitely grateful to once again have a chance to see their family members whom they did not think they would see once again after they were held hostage in South Sudan. That is one of the pilots being welcomed there by members of his family, definitely seeming very grateful, very emotional, very happy to see members of their families, to see the two pilots they had been hoping will get home. Tears flowing very freely. It looks quite weary, quite tired. That is another of the pilots there holding one of the babies. We're holding perhaps one of their children. We'll be getting details on that as their families are there to welcome them. Crying, emotional. I want us to cross over there live and just listening for ourselves on what really is happening at the Wilson Airport as the two pilots who were abducted or held hostage from the 7th of January have finally touched down at the Wilson Airport to the arms of their family members and government officials. Let's listen in.
Oh, we are home. Very good, very welcome back.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Excuse me, we want to give you a small press conference outside, so we request you to move outside. Kindly, let's just move outside. Let's move outside, please.
Chairman, okay, Doc.
Excuse me, please. Let's move. Can you guys, outside? Yes,
Also, those are live pictures we are bringing you from the Wilson Airport. A few minutes ago, the two pilots who had been held hostage in South Sudan after their plane crashed in the Upper Nile in a Kobo area have finally come back home after the government cut a deal with the rebels and agreed on the amount of money to be compensated for a life lost and property that was destroyed during that particular crash. The two pilots, safe and sound, finally back home, welcomed by government officials led by Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary Ambassador Monica Juma and members of their family. Tears flowing freely. Definitely very grateful to be back home after 2 long months filled with anguish for them and for their families. We are expecting a press briefing from Ambassador Monica Juma, the Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary, for more details on perhaps what kind of deal was cut. This happened yesterday. They were released yesterday, but they've touched down in their land at the Wilson Airport just a few minutes ago, where family members had thronged the airport waiting for them. Grateful to have them back. We will be keeping tabs on this particular story there from that Wilson Airport. Our team continues to be on the ground to bring you live pictures of what is happening, who is present, what is going to be said. It will be very interesting to hear what the pilots have to say, of course, once they are able to speak and once they are able to talk about what happened to them in South Sudan. We will be coming back to that shortly. I want us to quickly take a short break.